We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Happy to say that the air quality has improved in the Vancouver area. Never been so happy for our stereotypical wind and rain. As soon as we hit something close to resembling fall, the weather turns bad. It's been a good thing here. We saw some sky that wasn't smoke, so happy about that. And recording this on, Tuesday, the 22nd of September. Been a busy day for me. Been a busy months for Tom. So, yeah, we're here to answer some questions and hopefully muddle our way through this one.
I believe I am one mirror away from not having to order anything else significant for the remodel. I think I just have to order a mirror and I'm done.
Famous last words.
I know. I have rugs rugs we need to shop for and everything else. I know that, but that's not going to be that. I'm just gonna, just opt out of all that. You guys go pick a rug. I don't care.
Yep.
I don't care. Just send me a picture of it and I can veto it from home, where I will not be leaving ever again. Yes, today I got to drive to 3 different Lowe's to pick up baseboards because didn't have enough for all of the baseboardage that we needed in this house at one Lowe's, and so I ended up at 3. And the further away I got from my house, the more lax the mask wearing became. So, yes. I was like, one dude, I swear to you, there was 2 guys. They were clearly there together. They were working on whatever they were working on. One dude had his mask on his forehead, and one had it on his chin. I was like, dude, you're like statisticians. Just you guys nailed it. If you're,
right.
if you're statisticians, I just get out divide by 2. Killed it.
Yeah, I gotta say, people around here, almost everybody has a mask with them here. Whether they're actually wearing it, questionable. Right.
Yes,
but they have one.
People are getting very comfortable. I want to say, and I'll be honest. If there's people that listen to this podcast are like, I'm so sick of hearing them talk about COVID, dude. I am so sick of talking about COVID. I'm so sick of talking about
I would much prefer it to be gone and never have to be spoke of again.
But we have friends, and I have seen them in public many times, thinking to myself, wow, they're just really comfortable not being as safe as I am. And maybe it makes you question yourself. It makes you question yourself whether or not you are overreacting or you're being mean to your children or whatever. And I just found out this week that they both got it. And I'm like, it brings me no joy.
Well,
it brings me no joy to hear that. But at the same time, I'm like, it's a little bit of a, okay, well, maybe I'm not crazy. Because, I mean, we're all going to look back at this time and think to ourselves, did I do enough? Did I not do enough? We should really be evaluating how we reacted and try to make sure that we react better in the future. But while we're in the midst of it, you got to constantly question yourself. You got to constantly question.
I mean,
yourself.
my thinking in all matters of safety is if you did more than you really had to do, like I would much rather err on that side in all matters of safety than to have not done enough. So.
That's what I tell my kids. I'm like, if the worst case scenario is I wore a mask when I didn't need to, I got to wear a mask. Like while walking into a bank and nobody shot me. It was awesome.
What if we make the world a better place for nothing, Tom? What if we do that?
I just want to tell you, because every once in a while you'll be walking around the supermarket or whatever, and somebody will have a mask on, and then they'll pull it down for whatever reason they came up with, and I'm like, dude, straight up, I'm going to be honest with you, that mask was helping you out. You were doing much. You had much better chance with the ladies in here when you did not pull that mask down. You've got some nice eyes, and the picture I had of what was underneath that
Mm,
mask was much better than reality, dude. You need to keep that
let the
mask on
imagination.
until yeah, until she's already fallen in love with you. That's how I got my wife. I wooed her via email and phone when she saw me the second time. Well, yeah, basically the second time. It's a long story, but she was like,
Mm.
I was like, it was too late. You're already in love with me. I'm sorry. I wooed you with words, lady. You're mine now. And then, she got stuck with me, so I guess she's the real loser in this whole thing. All right, we can't. I mean, I literally do not want to talk about AV tonight. I just
Aw.
want to I want to sit here and chat with my friend and just have a beer and talk about the world because I've been uh, basically herding cats with all my
Yeah.
contractors and everything
Yeah.
else, and herding cats with my children and their schooling, and we're getting our first report cards coming out,
Oh,
and we've already
jeez.
got bad grades, and I just want to smack the lot of them. But we will talk about AV because this is AV Rants, your home theater and AV questions answered. To get your question answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. That's right, question@avrant.com. There's other ways to contact us, but if you want to get your question on the podcast, you email us at
That
question@avrant.com.
really counts this week. I've mentioned in previous weeks that I wouldn't necessarily gather questions from Twitter and Facebook or anywhere
Yep.
beside question at avrant.com, and that is what I did this week. It's just how things went with some things taking a lot longer this morning than they were meant to. So we'll
Yeah.
mention that a little bit in the news. But yes, question at avrant.com. That's the way to be on the podcast.
That's right. There was that one dude that hit us up on Facebook said that he had sent his question in that
Yep.
way and it hadn't gotten answered. Did
It
we
was
get that
a matter
sorted
of
out?
another thing, an unofficial rule of mine. I cut off what I put on the topic list for the week on Sunday night. His came in on
Okay,
Monday morning. So it
there
was
you go.
just a
I figured it was
Yep,
something
it
like
was just
that.
a matter of I
Yeah,
hadn't mentioned his name as someone already on the list because I hadn't put it on the list because he came in on Monday morning. So and that was an easy clear
there
up.
we go.
He completely understood. He's on the list this week.
There we go. All right, you can go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there. I'm about to turn those comments off, by the
Yeah,
way. There's not. It's not that I don't want your comments. I love your comments. It's just that Russian hackers do nothing but try to
right.
force their and I get emails from people. Why is my somebody trying to change my
Uh,
email, my password? I'm like, they're not. It's just Russian
and for
hackers.
the
WordPress is so ubiquitous
right.
that they just try to do this. And I put all kinds of different ways that it's supposed to detect if you're a human on there, and it still stops it. So I'm about to turn those comments back off
Yeah.
again. But you can go to facebook.com/avrant podcast, youtube.com/avrant. You can contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His Twitter's at First Reflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter's at avrant_Tom. We want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy a Cup of Coffee link, and leave us a PayPal donation. We want to thank Timothy, or Tim, I don't know what he goes by, or maybe just Big T,
Yeah.
for that doing that this week. So thank you, Big T.
Yes. Timothy, that's the word I'm reading, and I'll just read it off the page. But thank you very much for that PayPal donation. It is appreciated.
We also want to thank our 125 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a subscription service where you subscribe to support your content creators of choice. If you choose us, you can give us a minimum of $1 a month and a maximum of infinity dollars. Bill Gates, looking at
Mm.
you. So we have 125 patrons right now. We thank all of you. Thank you very much, gentlemen and
For
ladies.
sure, patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up. So thank you very much to our 125 patrons over there.
Also want to thank DJ. Wait. If you can't support us financially, we completely understand. So if you've got some other way to support us, do it and let us know what you did. So I want to thank DJ from that. What's that podcast called? I can't remember because he hasn't paid me yet.
Well, maybe this is your payment, Tom.
This is not. No, DJ. Come on, brother. We talked about this. We need a cold hard cash on the barrel, buddy.
Wow.
Anyways, DJ from the Bright Side Home Theater podcast is sending us some swag that he's getting in and probably hoping that we'll wear on the podcast so that other people will want it and buy it from him, which is probably what we'll do.
Why not?
So
You
there we
said
go.
you're running out of shirts, so that very well might happen.
I could go in my bedroom and push all the stuff that's because we had to, all our rooms are full of crap from every place else. So I could push that aside and get to my dresser and get more shirts, but then I'd have to do all that. So I have four cotton t-shirts and like 3 that I use for exercise. And in Florida, if I go outside for longer than 5 minutes, I have to change my shirt. 4 shirts was not enough cotton t-shirts for my plan here. So.
Oh, man.
Thank you, DJ.
Yes, thank you very much, DJ. And I might as well mention it now. DJ and I recorded another episode of the Brightside Home Theater podcast. That should be out the same day as this episode of AVRant. Both of us publish our audio-only versions on Friday. So yeah, he and I chatted for, I think longer than the first hour about other things, and then we dug into The Martian, the Matt Damon movie there.
I could have done The Martian. I just watched that recently.
So that
it wasn't the 4K version, though.
Yes. Well, we did a double thing. We did the 4K compared to the 3D version because both of us have 3D displays, and we've got to use them while they still function because there's no replacing them at this point.
I have a 3D display. I just can't use it because I don't have the glasses. All right. So we got some notes of gratitude from people thanking us for keeping this podcast going through the hardships of COVID and everything else that's going on in life. So thank you, Eric, Matt, Chad, Tom, not me, different guy. He also says this, he's a new listener, Terry and Matt again. 2 Matts, different last names.
Indeed. We got Eric, Matt B, Chad, Tom, Terry, and Matt G. So, really do appreciate those notes of encouragement and thanks. It is really appreciated. Very, very nice to get those coming in every week. So, like to give a mention of that and want to thank everybody who continues to listen and send in questions to question@avrant.com.
Yes. Right. That's an exciting thing that happens. All right, in the news, we mentioned how last week we were recording on the same day as Apple's news event and the day before Sony's PlayStation 5 event. So here we go. As expected, the new Apple Watch and iPad models were announced, but the most interesting news is that Apple will now bundle their various subscription services for a discount and a single bill. Apple One offers arcade, music, TV Plus, and 50 gigabytes of iCloud storage for $15 a month. It's a $6 saving over buying subscribing to each service individually. There's a family plan for $20 a month. There's also a $30 a month Premier tier that adds News Plus, Fitness Plus, and 2 terabytes of iCloud storage. I guess.
Yep.
Whatever.
So, Apple wants that monthly subscription money. Like, here's all
that money.
Here's all the stuff we do. Here's all the services we provide. Maybe if we stick them all together in one bill, you'll actually buy them. That's what they're hoping.
Why didn't they just call it Apple Cable Service? It feels like a go toward. I guess TV OS 14 was supposed to bring 4K YouTube support to Apple TV 4K, but it doesn't work.
Nope.
So
I have confirmed this.
Firmware update.
Well, supposedly all that's actually needed is now an update for the actual YouTube app on the Apple TV 4K. There hasn't been one in months. So supposedly that'll get this working. We still don't know. Nobody will be explicit about whether or not, in addition to 4K resolution, there will be HDR support. Don't know.
All I know is that I'm very happy that YouTube sent Cobra Kai over to Netflix because I'm enjoying the heck out of it. Holy crap. That's kind of fun. My kids are enjoying it. They haven't even seen the first one. Well, I mean, the first one. I guess, are there 3, 4?
There are at least 3 Karate Kid movies, but only the first 2 are Daniel Russo.
Original.
So.
Yeah. Right. All right, PS5. The prices, $500 and $400 for the all-digital edition with no disc drive, and release dates, November 12th, 2 days after Xbox Series, whatever they're going to call it, were announced last Wednesday. Then Sony tweeted that pre-orders would start at select retailers on Thursday, but retailers didn't wait, and pre-orders went live that same Wednesday, leaving many, many gamers frustrated.
But
You know what's great
not
about
high.
gamers?
Not high. Oh my
Is
God.
it's not hard to get gamers frustrated because all you have to do is look at them or funny or just tell them that their game system is not the best one ever.
Yep.
So
So
whatever.
I tuned into the Wednesday live stream late so that I could skip through all the stuff I didn't care about, which was like 95% of that event, just to see the price and launch date at the very end, as suspected. Then they didn't say in that live event when pre-orders would be available, but they tweeted it out shortly after. They're like, yep, could be as early as tomorrow. I'm like, okay. So I started just, casually browsing around the Canadian retailer websites like Best Buy and Walmart and Amazon, just to see if any of them had like product landing pages yet, because, a lot of times they put that up beforehand. And lo and behold, there's Best Buy's with pre-order now, the button already live. I'm like, oh, all right. So, yeah, I got my pre-order in for a PlayStation 5, and I went, even though I pretty much never buy games on discs. I went for the full fat version with the disc drive because I gotta test that Ultra HD Blu-ray playback. I do it for the AVRant listeners.
You're a giver, Rob.
I am.
You sacrifice for us. Let's all pretend that he wasn't going to just do that anyways. Let's all just pretend that.
There's a world in which I might have bought the digital only edition, but not this one because I do AVRant.
There's no world where I would have bought the digital only version. No world where I am going to let them tell me that I no longer own the game. Microsoft tried to make fun of Sony and set an exact time and date for Xbox Series pre-orders, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or Eastern, whatever it is, EDT. September 22nd, pretty much every retail site crashed, leaving many, many gamers frustrated again. Different gamers, though.
But not I. I noticed that the landing page for Xbox Series X and S was live on Walmart.ca the day before. Now, they didn't open the pre-orders, but I just had that landing page ready to go, and they were like 2 minutes after, in my case, 8 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. The button, went active. I got in my order at Walmart, and then I wanted to secure additional pre-orders because my nephew and brother-in-law want to get them too. And so went over to Best Buy, and it was about 2 hours and 10 minutes later that they finally got their site working. And I had kind of given up, but decided to just, maybe casually check throughout the day. And better to be lucky than smart, because I apparently got in at just the right time and got a pre-order at Best Buy as well. So, yeah, I did well. And, hey, we're gamers. I'll go ahead and not exactly rub it in everybody else's face, because I don't really want to make anybody who really wanted to get one and couldn't feel bad. But you can all be happy vicariously through me for securing pre-orders. Once again, went for the full fat Xbox Series X, because I gotta have the Ultra HD Blu-ray drive to test it for AVRant.
Right, of course.
Yep. That's how that went.
You're a giver. Okay, so Microsoft did secure the $7.5 billion deal to buy the parent company of Bethesda, id Software, Arcane, and several other studios. So franchises like Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Doom, Wolfenstein, Prey, The Evil Within, and more will now be first-party titles for Microsoft. Can we just very briefly mention how the gaming industry, as bad as everybody thought that they treated their employees, we now are realizing that it was the tip of the proverbial iceberg, and it is so much worse. And everybody out there who is a gamer needs to be cognizant of who you're buying games from, and not just say, well, I'm supporting the game developers, the artists, not the
publishers,
studio. Yeah, come on, guys. It is. Some of the things that we're hearing about that are coming out of some of these game studios are just monstrous and need to be addressed. And the way that you can address that is by refusing to buy their games digitally. What you do is you can still get the game. You just can't pre-order it to get all the fancy whatever crap that they're trying to tell you. You gotta buy it used, and then you can get the game, and then that you're not directly supporting that game studio anymore, so that those people will go and find hopefully jobs at game studios that will not abuse them. So that's my 2 cents there. All right, a small update to our mention of the Oculus Quest 2 last week. It's cheaper than expected, only $300, but it's really $350 since most reviewers have found the new cloth head strap lacking and highly recommended, almost insist that you get the $50 Elite head strap replacement. Also, if you wear glasses, you almost certainly need the $40 Fit Pack to widen the face piece since the since the Quest 2 is smaller than the Quest 1. So if you're right back at the original $400 price unless you're willing to accept a poor fit. And there's also the $130 package that includes the Elite strap with a battery attached to it, plus a carrying case that can accommodate all of that. So whatever, yeah.
Yep.
And then there's loot boxes.
I canceled my pre-order for that because I don't need a Quest 2 for myself. I was going to get it for my niece because she loves VR. But my sister, her mom, was like, no, you are not getting her a VR headset for Christmas. She does not want to deal with trying to get her out of the VR world. So that remains a treat when you come over to your uncle's place.
Oh, there you go. So how about some good news? Flat Panels HD launched their TV database. It's very handy. You should use it if you're researching which TV to buy based on the features you want. So
I very much like that database. It's accurate. It's handy. It's very useful. I hope it stays updated.
What? CBS All Access will be rebranded as Paramount Plus next year? So Plus is the new lowercase I?
It is.
Dang you, Disney. Why?
And
why?
CBS All Access, I mean, that was the problem. The problem was not calling it Paramount Plus. It'll fix everything.
Okay. So Paramount or CBS or whoever you are, the only way that you can name something after yourself is if you have enough name recognition that people know what you have put out. CBS, all I know is Star Trek and a bunch of CSI stuff, right? That's all I know about that place, right? Paramount, I'm pretty sure Mission Impossible. I think that might be right, and that's about all I could tell you about that. And those two things do not connect. So now I think you're a completely different service. I guess changing your name is easier than just admitting that you're gonna fail. So let's go with that. Yeah. All right. The Peacock is coming to Roku. No sign of HBO Max yet for Roku. No word on Peacock coming to Amazon Fire devices yet. So the whole world went meh.
I mean, when are they going to change their name to Universal Plus? You got to do it. You got to be like all the other studios. That'll fix everything.
That Disney will just buy all of you and just put an extra plus after their name for each one of the companies that they buy. So there'll be Disney Plus will be on the Paramount and all the Universal crap. So
Apple could buy them all too. Apple legitimately has enough money in the bank to buy every Hollywood studio in cash, and they've already got Apple TV Plus. So there, perfect.
Yeah, they should just do that.
Yeah.
That's about the only way Apple's going to get me back on to one of their devices again.
Oh, man.
All right, folks have received some of the first NVIDIA RTX 30 series graphic cards and tried to use the 120 Hz output offered by their HDMI 2.1 connections on 2019 and 2020 LG OLED TVs found they were getting black screens when trying to use G-Sync variable refresh rate and chroma subsample colors when trying to output 120 RGB. LG has responded by saying a firmware update is in the works. They said that through their marketing firm, Emotiva. But we can't help but wonder how many people actually have HDMI cables capable of passing 40 or 48 gigabits per second.
Yeah.
And I would say very few.
Well, no kidding, because, I mean, so Monoprice is one of the few places, now it's not official, they don't have official ultra-high-speed HDMI cables because nobody does. The certification hasn't been issued to anybody's HDMI cables yet, but Monoprice did actually test their cables. I mean, it's an unofficial capacity, but they tested them to see if their cables could actually pass 48 gigabits per second, and they can at a maximum of 3 feet. So...
That's right. Well, I mean, how far away do you need it to be? Come on.
I'm thinking that some of these people who bought these, like, 8K HDMI cables that are 8 feet long, which is not an unreasonable length, but when the ones that have actually been tested topped out at 3 feet, it makes me suspect that maybe some people's cables are actually the issue. It would make sense why you switch it to 120 hertz and your screen goes black. So I don't think LG is necessarily
Not the only
blame.
thing that's really, really is good about HDMI is when it fails spectacularly.
Right. Yes.
You could. Then when people are like, "Oh, I got a better HDMI cable, now my colors are better." No, that's not how it works.
But I'm not quite willing to lay this all at LG's feet as being the issue.
I'm not either.
Yeah.
All right, some comments here. Infinite Gary just wanted to add his voice to the chorus of satisfied Mitsubishi mini split customers. He has one for a small room with a 5.1 speaker system in it. It's been quiet and flawless in operation.
Now that's good. I'm happy to hear it. We can feel better about suggesting and recommending them.
That's right. Gary also forwarded an S video to HDMI converter from cables.com for $90 since Carl asked about a solution for that last week.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Michael also heard Carl's S video to HDMI request and noted that he has been an issue. This has been an issue for retro gamers for a long time now, and there are indeed issues with 480i output being converted to HDMI, as Rob mentioned last week. So there's actually a brand new converter that was just launched by RetroTINK, the 2X Mini. It's only $70, so better than Gary's already. And all it does is convert S video and composite to HDMI at 480p. So that should solve a lot of those issues.
So it's pretty much the bare minimum, but hey, that's what you need for an S video S-VHS deck. So
what else do you want it to do at that point?
Well,
I mean, it's really all it's got to do.
Additional upconverting is about all it could offer, which the one that Gary mentioned does. But I mean, hey, you can't blame Gary for not knowing. Literally, as we say this on the 22nd of September, this 2X Mini from RetroTINK just became available yesterday on the 21st. So it is a brand new little device.
Yeah. Pre-orders went live a week ago, but the site's all cracked.
Didn't seem to be an issue.
We should put a pre-order, like a pre-order download button on our website that just takes you to an oops page.
Yeah, that was Best Buy all morning this morning.
All right, some questions from last week. I guess it doesn't matter what the week they're from. But anyways, Infinite Gary says, with Marantz recently releasing a new version of their Model 30 integrated amp, Gary had to look back at the classic Model 30 from 1970. He noticed among its 8 dials that the mode dial lets you choose mono stereo or stereo reverse. What's stereo reverse? Well, I mean, it just sounds like it switches left and right. Yep. I don't think that there's a whole lot of thought that goes.
That's what it is. The left channel comes out of your right speaker. The right channel comes out of your left speaker. That is stereo reverse. Why would such a thing ever exist, huh?
I don't, people who don't know how to wire their speakers properly, I guess.
Well, there were at the time of this thing existing. Do you remember auto reverse tape decks?
Yeah, of course.
So there were a handful of auto-reverse tape decks out in the world that only ever expected to play in mono. So when they auto-reversed, they flipped the left and right channels on you.
Well, there you go. I just keep thinking about that. There was this one album I had by Sonic Youth that was a cassette, and when you played it on side A, it played forward, and if you press the button to flip it to the other side, it would be in the exact same spot, but it would be in reverse.
Ah, nice.
And you would play the whole thing backwards. It was such a trip. I mean, it was completely useless. But one thing it was like the world's best DRM, because you could not get that to fit perfectly on like an aftermarket cassette. You know, when you flipped it over, it would not be in the right spot. So, anyways, Gary, he was watching a video about aftermarket power cords. I think we should put Gary on timeout. You're in a 3-week, no questions answered timeout, Gary, just for watching this video. So yes, he knows our thoughts on those. But at one point, they talked about dissipating heat and how preventing the power cords from heating up ensures you always get the correct current being fed to your components. Is there anything to that? I would just say, Gary, you've plugged things in before. When you have unplugged them, and I'm talking about things that actually take a lot of current,
Sure.
like, you know, a food processor or anything with like a big motor in it that requires a whole lot of
Hmm.
RPMs, right? When you unplugged it, did you ever burn your fingers?
On the power cord.
That's
I mean,
right.
some other part of that
Did you?
device might be hot.
Oh yeah, my mixer when I'm doing bread or whatever, especially if it's a bigger batch, the motor will get super hot
Mm.
for sure, no doubt about it. But when I unplug it, I never once had to put on like a glove.
Now,
The
the
power
thing
cord never got
is,
hot.
I don't know if Tom has ever done this. You've probably known better throughout your entire life, but you've probably at least heard of somebody plugs in an extension cord. It is a skinny
Yeah,
extension cord. And
sure,
after a while, that
sure,
skinny extension cord gets very, very hot. Yeah,
sure,
sure. Now, so
sure.
this is a bit of in reverse because the reason a power cord would get hot is because it has too high resistance to pass the current that is being requested by the device that it is powering. And the reason the resistance of that power cord would be too high is because it's too skinny. Which is why the
Right,
OEM power cord that came with the device surely would have been a thicker gauge. And if there were anything saying if you're going to plug this into an extension cord, make sure your extension cord is at least this gauge or thicker. Because if it
right.
isn't, the power cord is going to heat up because it's too skinny and the resistance is too high. So if there is some esoteric aftermarket power cord proclaiming that it is great because it has heat dissipation technology, why is it heating up in the first place? Because it's too skinny to pass through sufficient
Right.
wattage. That is the issue, and it is not a power cord you should use. If you use a sufficiently thick, low resistance power cord, it will not heat up. That's that.
I mean, you can pretty much hot swap any power cord off of any major electronic
Yeah.
device in your home theater, and they would all be thick enough.
Well, I mean, almost all of your AV receiver that have a removable power cord, subwoofer that has a removable power cord,
Yep.
amp, whatever, they're going to be a 14 gauge power cord. I mean,
Yeah.
almost all of them are, which the wiring inside your wall is almost certainly 14 gauge wire. So if it was all designed to go into a 15 amp circuit, 14 gauge wire should be absolutely fine, and that'll cover almost anything. It's, when you get up to a 20 amp device and circuit, well, then you're going to have 12 gauge wire. It'll be a thicker power cord, but yeah. That's about it. You shouldn't need something to dissipate the heat on your aftermarket power cord. Like I say, if it needs that, it's because it's too skinny inside and heating up because of
That's
that.
right. Anthony. Anthony's having a house built in the Philippines. He actually wrote us about it with plans for a large 19 by 27 foot room back in episode 649. I do remember that because we
Mm.
haven't had so many people from the Philippines. I think the other guy was Bob,
Yep,
right?
Bob is in the
Bob was from the
Philippines.
Philippines. But factors have changed, and now the room will be half that size, 13.5 by 19 feet long now, but still with a 12-foot ceiling. There will be a window on the left wall, and a door into the room will be on the right wall near the back. He wants to have an L-shaped couch since his wife often likes to lie down to watch her shows, but he also wants to have a second row of theater recliners, and he wants the recliners to be the primary row. Back when the room was going to be 27 feet long, he had envisioned a much greater seating distance with truly huge projection screen. But now he's thinking it might be more to his liking to have the theater recliners as the back row and put the L-shaped couch up front, but still have his large desired field of view in the back row. Ooh.
Mm.
The couch will get a massive field of view up front. That is
Yep.
true. An uncomfortably large one. If you're looking for large field of view in the back, it's going to be whoppa. In his current setup, they sit 10 feet from a 106-inch screen for a 42-degree field of view, and they both would prefer it to be larger. So, what are our thoughts on the best way to configure his seating, given that what he has described? One other factor to potentially consider is that he does not want a false wall, partially because the room is a lot smaller now, and also because he prefers to see his gear and speakers. So, along with the seating, what do we think his screen size should be? Okay, so I do not understand any of this
Oh,
because and let me understand. Let me explain to you why. Uh, Reclining seats
yeah.
are, in my opinion, and I want you to understand I'm at an Airbnb right now that has an L-shaped couch, that if I could drag it out into the street and set it on fire, I would. It is the least comfortable thing I have sat on, perhaps ever. In fact, every chair, every bed in this house is purgatorial. I hate it all. Um,
Wait, what?
I,
What kind of reclining seats are you talking about?
So no, I'm talking about at this Airbnb that I'm staying
Uh-huh.
at. Every chair, everything that's in here, I hate.
Oh, okay.
All the couches, all of
Okay.
it. Now, I believe that I don't believe, in my experience, recliners are much more comfortable to recline in
Sure.
than an L-shaped, that sort of big flat thing
Like the
that,
chaise at the end of the
yeah,
typical
yeah,
thing. But like if you want to lay down like sideways, like that type of, or prone, if you want to be on your stomach or something like that, you can't really do that in a recliner. Recliner is really only good for, sitting and then reclining. If you want to.
That's true. I mean, you could go side to side as long as if you had like a 3 or 4 seat
Mm,
recliner, one person could be sitting and reclining, the other person could be lying down on their side, going to the side,
yeah.
without there being much of an issue there. Because I know, because my wife does it all the time. And but yes, you could not face forward. I will agree with that. Uh, I, I, it's my opinion that you should get just when you go shopping for recliners, get out of your head this idea that what you need is home theater, and I put that in air quotes, home theater seating, with the cup holder and the armrest and all that other stuff. Stop that, okay? Because what you can do is what I have in mind are not leather, because I didn't want leather, but a fabric covered seats that are extra, each one of them is extra wide. And when you went in there and you looked at their little setup, it was some massive thing,
Hmm.
right? They had like, 7 seats in a big L configuration, and the ones on the end auto recline, and they had some other ones, and they had like the L-shaped one that you could have as well, and everything else. So with that, what we did is we said, well, can we take that one, and that one? So the two end were the auto recline
Hmm.
ones, and the one in the middle was one that you had to, pull a lever to make
Sure.
happen. Okay. So we have a fully reclining couch that sits 5 people, though not super comfortably, but 4 people really comfortably, and 3 people have more seat than they could ever have anything to do
Hmm.
with. Uh, but you can put that together, and then you have a fully reclining couch, which
Yeah.
feels more like an actual couch than these quote home theater
Right.
seats. If you wanted to, you could also say, I want the auto recliner at the end. The middle seat will be, the manual one, because that's the only thing they ever offer, and the other one on the other side will be the L the one that's like the L-shaped part of
Hmm.
it. And that's what I would get. I would just that way you can pick and choose what you want, and I would not be, so laser focused on having a couch that's an L-shaped couch, that's an actual couch, and then having
Right.
the home theater seats also in
Yeah.
here as being a
Yeah,
different
you're
thing.
talking about, a sectional where the
Yeah,
normal couch part also can recline. Because,
yeah,
yeah, I agree that I think what you should focus on here. So, I mean, I'm going to come at it from the backwards angle as well, which is, you mentioned no false wall. The total room length in here is 19 feet. But if you're going to have no false wall and therefore not an acoustically transparent screen, that's what I read into it, inferred from that.
right.
Even with a 12-foot ceiling, like, you don't want to have to be craning looking upward to see the top of your screen. So you need some reasonable distance from the bottom edge of the screen to the floor, below which your center channel will reside. And you don't want to have your center channel right on the floor. And to me, about the biggest you want to go in a setup where you aren't going to put the center channel behind an acoustically transparent screen is about 135 inches. You could maybe make 150 inches work. But 135 to me is sort of the upper limit. It also happens to coincide nicely with normal home theater projectors that can't illuminate a screen really nicely. I mean, 135 again is where they look really good. They can do 150, but you're not really going to ever get any HDR on a 150-inch screen. So I mean, I completely understand. He had these ideas originally, the twice the size room. He was going to sit very far away from like a 200-inch screen, pony up the money for the crazy bright projector that could actually illuminate such a thing. But, bringing the plans more down to earth, I'm like, if you go with a 135-inch screen for the type of field of view that you're describing watching, you're probably going to want to be about 10 and a half, 11 feet from a 135-inch screen. That's way closer than I would personally want to be.
Right.
I could withstand a 120-inch screen from 10 and a half or 11 feet. But you want bigger than that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know your taste. So 135 from about 10 and a half, 11 feet, that's going to be really nice for you. And then that leaves you in a 19-foot long room, ample space to have a second row, but not for the type of field of view that you want to have. Your guests are actually probably going to love it. They're probably going to love 135 from the second row, whereas you and your wife who love the bigger field of view, you sit in the first row. So I say, even if it means getting customized seats, get a row of seats that you and your wife are going to love sitting in that front row, and sit about 10 and a half to 11 feet away from a 135-inch.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. So with the room being 19 feet long, do we think you could potentially also fit a bar counter and bar stools behind the back row? Do you want people to actually be able to walk past
Right.
the couch?
Behind the back of the second row couch, yeah. Or second row,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
Well, even the first row. I mean, I think you'd end up with your couches. You have to climb into the couch
Right.
in order to get there for the second row to get the third row. 19 feet. I think you can choose. You can have one row of seats in a bar, or you can have two rows of seats.
Yeah.
I do not think you can have both.
No, 19 feet to me, if you're going with a projection setup of, 110 inches or larger, and therefore going to be sitting about 10 feet away or slightly more for the first row, then you want about 6 feet of space from your head position in the front row to the head position of the row behind you. You want about 6 feet. At that point, you're only leaving 2.5, maybe even only 2 feet to the actual physical back wall. There just isn't room for a bar back there.
Now, if you're really, really, really wanting that bar, then you forego the projection setup. You get like a 65-inch screen. You sit like 3 feet, 4 feet away from it for that big field of view.
You could do an 85-inch from like 5 feet in his case. He'd probably love the field of view, but I really think he was going for the more cinema-like feel where you're sitting farther back. Your eyes sort of get closer to that infinite focus point and all that type of stuff. So I wouldn't advise it here.
So what do we think of the speaker configuration should be? 7.2.4? Should he have more than one pair of side surrounds? Man, your room is not really big enough for that.
Oh, you could. You could.
I mean, I would go. This is okay. My theater is not much larger than what you're talking about here.
Your theater's smaller Oh no, wait, he was 19 not long. Oh, no. Sorry, I was thinking of the 27 originally.
Yeah. Mine's not that much larger than what you have right now, and I have 2 rows of seats. The second row is on the back wall, like literally on the back wall, and it's not really a row of seats. It's a 2-seater couch that somebody gave me that I would love to throw away. It doesn't really do anything back here, and almost nobody sits back here because you can't really see very well, and the surround back speakers are directly above your head, and everything sounds weird. If I were to do it over again, first of all, please, for the love of God, be honest with yourself. How often is anyone going to sit in the second row?
Right. I mean, originally he was thinking that he would often sit in the second row, but if you are following our advice and that is no longer the case, you and your wife are going to be in the front row, then yes, how often are anybody actually sitting in that back row?
So there's 2 things to consider. If it's rarely going to be used, if it's rarely going to be used, then we do not buy extra speakers and stuff for it because it's rarely going to be used. Okay. If it's going to be used often, then you're going to need to think about the surround experience you're going to want to have when you're back there. Either way, surround back speakers become questionable because of how close you are to that back wall. You can do it.
Yep.
You can do it.
Particularly if it's primarily about that front row, because there's definitely space for surround backs from your front row position.
Right. But if there's gonna be people, sitting back there all the time, do you want to have them? Because you're not calibrating for that row, you're calibrating for the front row.
Right.
So the surround back speakers are going to be significantly louder for them than they are for you. So do you want them to be experiencing that? Well, probably not.
Definitely wouldn't want to be on bar stools right against the back wall.
Oh, you certainly wouldn't. So if you're really, really wanting that, if that back row is going to be used a lot, then you would buy 2 pairs of side surrounds instead of 1 in order to make sure they're getting a good side surround experience, and no surround backs. If there's people aren't going to be sitting back there very often, then you can say, I will get 1 pair of side surrounds and surround backs because I'm sitting far enough away that the surround backs make sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. I would say I wouldn't mind, since this is a place being built, like pre-wiring for 6 overheads, because maybe you're going to end up with 6 overheads at some point, and you might as well pre-wiring in the building phase instead of retrofitting that, because that's a very minimal cost upgrade to just pre-wire it. Maybe even pre-wire for front wides if those positions are conducive, if that isn't where your door is or something like that. That would be it. I think Tom's plan makes sense.
So he was originally going to purchase all new speakers and subs for the much larger room, but now this room is smaller. He already has SVS Ultra bookshelves, Ultra Center, and Ultra Surrounds, plus dual PB12 plus subs. Would they be sufficient? Yes.
The full question was, would they be sufficient for the new room size? And the answer is definitely yes. Yeah.
They were sufficient for the older room size, I'm pretty sure.
Well, 27 feet long, I might question a little bit. Bookshelves as your front, left, right speakers. I might question it. Because you could legitimately be sitting more than 15 feet away at that point. But in a 13 and a half wide by 19 foot long room, where we're telling you to sit about 10 and a half feet away from the front wall, and it's not as though the bookshelf speakers are in the front wall, they'll be forward of that some distance. These are definitely sufficient PB12 plus subs in 13 and a half by 19 feet, even with the 12-foot ceiling, which does add some cubic footage of air. Still very, very sufficient for that room size. Yeah, things are coming up roses for you, really. This is going to cost a lot less.
So on a different subject, he'll be getting a new graphics card with HDMI 2.1 for his PC, and sticking with the large field of view, he'd like to use a 55-inch TV as his computer monitor. He was a bit worried about burn if he goes with OLED. What we recommend? Would we recommend a Samsung QLED instead, or something else? I don't know that I would recommend an OLED for this. I mean, I know he wants a big field of view, but I mean, you don't have to have a huge screen to have a big field of view when it's a computer monitor. You just have to have a monitor.
They got those 48-inch OLEDs now too, so that's a possibility. I mean, he was mainly thinking about it because it's been fairly well publicized that they are the monitors that support all the stuff. It's the full 4K 120, like the LG OLEDs. They're about the only game in town that supports G-Sync. And he's talking about a new graphics card with HDMI 2.1. I assume he's talking about the NVIDIA RTX 30 series that would be using G-Sync. Now, they should be capable of using the HDMI forum version of variable refresh rate as well, but whether or not PC games will actually support it, or the drivers in those NVIDIA graphics cards will support the HDMI forum version of VRR, I'm not sure. So if you want to be sure that you're getting something that supports NVIDIA G-Sync for your variable refresh rate, you kind of end up having to get an LG OLED because nobody else is supporting that. Now, if you can confirm that your future graphics card does support the HDMI forum version of VRR, then I would probably point you... I find it a bit tough to recommend the Samsung QLEDs because what they're doing with their local dimming is... They're trying so hard not to have blooming that they're actually just not illuminating little specks on black backgrounds. Like, it just stays black. You don't see the stars anymore. Yeah, you don't get any blooming. You also don't get any stars. I'm more in favor of Sony's X900H, to be honest with you. While it's not going to have the blackest blacks of an OLED or even look as black as a Samsung QLED, Sony is keeping all the detail in the image. You know, your blacks are slightly grayish, but all the detail is there. All the shadow detail is there. So I would favor that. I would look at a Sony X900H if you really don't want the OLED, but I kind of might lean to the OLED and just make sure all your Windows settings are that, you know, your taskbar disappears, your screensaver comes on after as little time as possible. You protect it as well as you can. And if you want G-Sync, you kind of have to.
Okay. So what would we recommend as a 2.0 setup for his PC? Hi-Fi Man headphones. That's what I would recommend.
But assuming he wants speakers, Tom.
If you want speakers, I always recommend Audio Engine.
Me
I
too.
got no problems with that. Yeah. They're easy recommendation. They get loud.
Yeah.
They're clear. They're self-powered.
Easy to connect.
A lot of easy connection points.
They support Bluetooth now too.
Honestly,
so even if you don't turn your PC on and you just want to stream some music to them from your phone, they got Bluetooth built in now. Yeah.
I would still really go with Hi-Fi Man headphones. Honestly,
I would say that if you want to consider and even perhaps audition, because shipping is going to be free both ways, S-VHS's Prime wireless bookshelf speakers, they're very nice. They work very nicely. They sound very good. And if you just want to audition them and say, not quite what I wanted, and send them back, it won't cost you a penny. So no harm in trying them.
All right. Mike has an open concept great room, and since he doesn't have a basement, it's really the only place to set up a home theater area. He is compromising right now by having his seats as close as possible to a 65-inch TV, but that's still 10 feet away in his case and isn't providing the experience he is hoping for. All of this has him very interested in ultra short throw projectors, but isn't super familiar with them. What sets UST or ultra short throw projectors apart from regular projectors, and what should be his biggest considerations? Light source, color wheel, DLP, LCD, what? So that is the first question. Okay, there's no A on that. All right. So what sets them apart? Well, I mean, you've almost certainly seen an ultra short throw projector at some point. At least if you've ever been in a school in the last like 5 years, they've all got them on those interactive whiteboard things. You know, it's actually part of the whiteboard. The whiteboard mounts to the wall, and there's this little
they have
stick
a thing hanging over it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and that's it. So that's essentially what a short throw projector is. It's meant to mount to the ceiling or right above, in within usually a couple of feet even.
Oh yeah. Or on a TV stand or credenza directly below the screen, like basically where a center speaker would go. It just kind of sits there and shoots the image up onto a screen from very, very close distance, hence the name ultra short throw.
Right. So traditionally the problem has been that these projectors are mostly used for business. So getting one for home theater that has accurate colors and all the other things that we would be concerned about has been difficult. I know that in recent times, people have become more interested in it, so we're seeing more options out there. I mean,
it's really within the past year that we've started to see some good, honest to goodness, good home theater ultra short throw options that don't cost $20,000 plus.
Right. So, like Rob said, that's, that up until now, every time somebody's asked us about it, we've been saying there's nothing out there for you. I mean, you could get it, but you're gonna say, how come everybody's kind of pink? And we'll be like, because you bought a crappy projector. You bought it, but that's just the way it is. But there are good ones now. Rob will tell you which ones they are.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, actually, that's the next question, is exactly what to get. So to elaborate on the questions he was asking, should he be looking for a specific type of light source? Almost all of them are laser lamps. The home theater ultra short throws that we're seeing right now. So you don't have a ton of choice in that matter. Color wheel, a DLP or LCD. I mean, you're only going to have a color wheel if it is DLP. And then it depends on what kind of laser light source you have. If it's actually a triple laser, then you don't need a light color wheel. If it's a dual laser where it's two blue lasers, one of them shining through onto a yellow phosphor and combining the yellow light with the blue light to make white, then you end up with a color wheel. And That predominantly just comes down to cost, because the
Right.
triple laser systems are going to be the $20,000, $30,000 ones that existed maybe 4 years ago at this point. So I don't think that's really what he's looking at. He's looking for the ones that are more in the, $3,000 or $4,000 type of range, maybe upwards of $6,000. So there's really only one LCD, and it just came out recently. It was announced last year, but didn't start shipping till very recently, which is Epson's LS500. It's a laser light source, but it's LCD panels. It's the whole Epson thing with a 1080p native that's being wobbled twice per frame. It's all of that stuff. They bundle theirs with a screen, so you don't have a choice in the matter. You choose either the 100-inch or the 120-inch size, and off you go. It comes with the screen, and that's it. So they're making it simple in some ways in that there aren't a ton of options. And I mean, really, what we used to care about most is, can it get you accurate video colors? Not just good for a slideshow presentation. Is this actually going to present video accurately? That was sort of the biggest consideration, because any of them are going to be designed to have enough light to combat ambient light, as long as you're using it with an appropriate screen. That's that part. So, second question is specifics.
So is now a good time to buy a UST projector, or are there big advancements coming down the pike that would make it a better idea to wait another year or two? Well, the fact that this is the first year you've been able to get a reasonably priced not even a reasonably priced as far as I'm concerned, ultra short throw projector should answer that question for you. This is right now, you're basically an early adopter if you buy it
Little
now.
bit, yeah.
And so will we see advancements coming in next year too? The longer COVID goes on, for sure, okay? Because people are in your same boat, and they're like, well, if it were a normal time, I would consider finally finishing the basement. But since I don't have black mold in my kitchen, and it's not, a health hazard to live in my house like it was in Tom's, then I am not inviting workers into my house. And just let me tell you, don't invite those people in. They never leave. They're here forever. They've been here for months.
Yeah.
And they're like house guests. They're just the worst. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be interested in maybe upgrading their screen. And if you don't think that the display companies and the projector companies aren't thinking about that right now, you've lost your mind. So I would not buy right now unless I absolutely had to.
So I'm a little bit more okay with buying one, because very recently we have the second generation Optima Cinema XP2 that was just announced and just released. The price is actually down to $3,300 now. Not cheap by any means, but when you're being able to throw a 120-inch image, you wouldn't be able to buy a flat panel at 120 inches for that. And the Cinema XP2 addressed many of the shortcomings of the P1. So the color got better. Apparently the focus is a little bit better, a little bit easier, and they reduce the latency if you're a gamer. Now, one thing you will not find in any somewhat reasonably priced ultra short throw right now is cutting edge gaming stuff. None of them have HDMI 2.1, none of them do 4K 120, none of them do variable refresh rate. So if you are a cutting edge gamer and you want those types of features, then you need to wait. And I would be more surprised if we don't get those features on future ultra short throw projectors, because a lot of them are being marketed as televisions. Hisense isn't even calling their versions ultra short throw projectors. They're calling them giant screen TVs, because again, they bundle it with a screen as well, and they're marketing it that way. LG is marketing some of theirs as televisions. Epson is even sometimes referring to the LS500 as a television. So because they are aiming it that direction and trying to market it that way, I think there's a decent chance that you will see HDMI 2.1 features being added to those, perhaps even before traditional projectors. So for a cutting edge gamer, I would suggest that you basically have to wait for those features. But if you just want a very decent all-around projector that is going to be good for television, good for movies, completely decent for gaming, then that Optima Cinema XP2 kind of stands above the rest.
All right. Are there limits on screen size? He'd want at least 120 inches, probably 130 inches if that's possible. And then what are the best screens for UST projectors? Well, like Rob said, not a lot of them, but some of them come with a screen,
Hmm.
and that's uh, a very important part of this too, because the light's not coming at it the way that it normally would be, from a projector, where it comes essentially over your head and it reflects at an angle back down
Right.
towards you. It's a much steeper angle it's coming down at, which means your screen a lot of times has to have ways of making sure that it's coming at you at the right direction. If not, you're essentially looking at it off angle. So, Rob, which are the best screen materials?
Yeah, so if you want to say best, I'm going to point you to Illumin Vision. I think that their Aurora Ultra Short Throw is the best that's out there. But it ain't cheap. You're talking, and its maximum size is 120 inches. That's as big as the Aurora Ultra Short Throw from Illumin Vision goes, and you're talking like $3,000 for that thing. So this is pretty much the same price as the projector that I just mentioned, just for the screen,
Right.
and you don't have the option to go bigger than 120. A lot of the ultra short throws top out at 120. They have a less expensive version over at Illumin Vision, which is their reference ultra short throw. The technology in that doesn't reject the overhead and other ambient light quite as well as the Aurora does, but it still works nicely for the ultra short throw. And you can get that in a size as large as 150 inches, the reference ultra short throw from Illumin Vision. It is less expensive than the Aurora. It's about $2,200 for the 120-inch size, so about $800 cheaper. But one of the issues is that the ultra short throw projectors have a limited focal range. You do still need to pull focus on them, and a lot of them won't let you focus at larger than about 130 inches. That tends to be about as big as a lot of them can go while remaining sharp in focus. So they're tend to be targeted at that 120-inch size. That is largely what they are. Now, if you need a less expensive screen for an ultra short throw projector, you're going to go to Elite Screens. You're going to want their AON CLR standing for ceiling light rejection. It performs about the same as Illumin Vision's reference for that, but there again tops out at 120 inches. And yeah, that's sort of your lot when you're looking at these. But that one goes for under $1,500. So it's a significant savings in price there for the Elite Screens. AON CLR.
All right. All right. Brandon, on his Marantz SR7011, is there an easy way to have the bass louder for music, but not for movies? The setting for 2-channel playback lets you change speaker size, distance, and level, but only for the front, left, and right speakers. There is no additional control for the subwoofer. It would be fine if its desired music setting only applies to a certain input. Yeah, you can definitely change. Can't you?
Mm-hmm.
He wants the bass to be louder. So there is like a bass up button, right, that you can use. Does that apply? Is that for settings? Is that input specific? Because if it's input specific, it should stick from one to the other.
Well, there is an input specific one to basically do what he wants, which is accessed via pressing the options button on the remote. You won't find it in the settings. If you press setup and go to the settings, you won't find it. You have to access it through options. And in there, it gives you individual channel levels that you can adjust, very much like your trim levels for your speakers, but it is not a global setting. It is an input specific setting. So it's a good thing that what you want to do can be input specific. Because
Yeah.
if it weren't, if you just wanted this as a stereo setting that is global to all inputs, that would be a bigger challenge. I wouldn't have a solution for you there. But since you're talking about one specific source having this alternate setting to everything else, you can do it via pressing the options button and adjusting the channel levels for just that one input.
So for a sound system that's open to the entire house, he asked about SVS subs, and we said he should definitely go ported. For his budget, he was thinking dual PB4000 or PC4000, but what about other brands? Could he match or exceed their performance at a lower price? So yeah, here is where you start looking at power sound
You sure
audio
do.
and sometimes rhythmic or HSU, because here is where as SVS gets bigger, they also tend to get more flagshipy,
Mm-hmm.
which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that this is where they do their R&D, and then that trickles down to the other subs eventually. So they tend to be a lot more bells and whistles, but you can get something with fewer bells and whistles from
Right.
somebody else, not quite as nice looking, but all the performance and maybe even a little bit more performance. And I would start with looking at Power Sound Audio, Rhythmic, and then probably HSU.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, you're not going to get like the app control on the less
Right,
expensive ones
right.
that SVS offers, right? So you're going to give up a feature like that just to get similar output and extension capabilities, but at a lower price. And you might also end up with a physically larger box. I mean, the PB4000
Yes.
also already a giant box, but if you want even more efficiency to get similar output and extension for a lower price, you end up with an even bigger box. So I'll actually say, I mean, I love HSU for the value of their VTF-15H, even more for the value of the VTF-3 Mark V HP that often gets overlooked. But
Right.
they don't quite match the full output capability of the 4000 series from SVS anymore. They were almost on par with the 13 Ultra series that the 4000 replaced, but the 4000 increased things. So yeah, I can't say that that's really the solution there. So I would say Power Sound Audio is your top value choice here. $1,600 can get you the V1812, and as the name implies, it is an 18-inch driver in this monster. It is ported. It is an absolutely enormous box. But if you want to, in fact, slightly exceed the capabilities of a 4000 series SVS at a lower price, then the V1812 from Power Sound Audio is a value champ there. Now, I would also mention Monoprice, because Monoprice's THX 15 in the ported version, of course, that's coming in at $1,340, so a good cost savings there. It has similar protection, DSP protection on the driver and amplifier that SVS offers, but at this lower price with the big 15-inch driver. It's a monster, but that is one worth considering as well here.
Yeah, that's a real ugly sub from Power Sound. It's not pretty.
Not
Put it in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has an Epson 4000 projector mounted to his ceiling. The room above is a bedroom. If one of his kids jumps up there, it makes the projector vibrate and wobble. He knows there isn't much his ceiling mount can do about the structure itself being shaken by someone jumping on it, but would one of the peerless mounts that we recommend be more robust and reduce how long the projector wobbles compared to that cheap Amazon ceiling mount he's using now? Wow, that's strange. So they're moving the entire, whatever the projector mount is attached to is vibrating because of your kids, which means that they're either vibrating the entire floor or they're vibrating whatever it is that that mount is attached to, which may not be structural as much as it is, part of some other thing. So it seems like you would need a mount that actually had vibration dampening
Yeah.
in it, and that is not going to be as cheap
No.
as the peerless ones we normally recommend, because this peerless stuff that we recommend it because it's very easy to adjust with those little worm screw thingies.
Yeah.
But that's not going to help you with this.
No, they're not going to alleviate this issue that you're describing. I wish they could, but they can't. Now, there is such a thing as a projection mount dampener. Chief sells one. They have two versions, one that is meant for home level projectors and another that's meant for commercial, but you could go for the home one. It's $295. It's not a cheap device. Now, it looks like a three-pronged fidget spinner. That's really what this thing kind of looks like. And you might be going, oh, those arms must be the new mount. Nope, they are just weighted arms that are there to dampen vibrations. You actually need to have a 1 1/4 inch threaded pipe above and below this dampener. So yeah, that is how that would work. by all accounts, quite effective, but not cheap. $295 to add that thing to your projection mount, and might end up extending the length of your ceiling projection mount if that's what you have to do to get it mounted. I found one other company in California that is selling like shock mounts, but they started at $400 and went up from there. Right. So this is less expensive than that. I do trust Chief. The stuff they make is rock solid.
Right.
It's just, it's a pretty expensive solution.
It's a strange thing, though, huh? That's a strange thing to have that vibration come through the ceiling.
Some houses where the joists between floors are as thin as 2x6s now. You know, you can flex the whole darn floor without much effort. It could be as simple as that.
Tell you what, I know what my solution is. Tell my kids stop jumping around. Dorks.
Don't
make Daddy come up there, because if I have to come up there,
especially if it's
you're
only
in
for
trouble.
the length of a movie, you know.
I know. Go take a nap. Go read a book. Go outside. No, don't go outside. It's Corona. Stay inside. Read a book. Monty previously asked during the week when DJ co-hosted what our minimum dimensions would be for a theater with 2 rows of reclining seats, and where we would position the door and one window if plans were flexible. Rob said 14 by 19 with a door and a window both at the back half of the room, or in the door in the back half and the window hidden behind the screen. If possible, DJ wondered aloud if this was a renovation or something being built from the ground up. So Monty is back to say that this is a new house being built from an existing plan, but they can customize the plan before construction begins, so that's why he was asking. In the plan, there's a room currently labeled as the office. That's right. Steve Carell lives there. It's 12 by 15 by 9, but it could be customized and expanded. He was initially thinking 13 by 25.
Yup. So we've got ourselves a diagram. So to briefly describe, I mean, it looks like this is next to the entrance, because we see a foyer in the diagram. It's to the left of the office. We have a foyer, a hallway to the north of the office, and then to the bottom right, we've got the garage. Now, I imagine it might be possible to steal something from there, but directly adjacent to the office and the garage is the mudroom and the laundry room. So when he says this can be customized and expanded, I'm not exactly clear how, where. I don't know if this is...
Well, it's got to go into the garage somewhat,
I would think
and
so.
Maybe take over part of the mudroom.
Yeah, take over the mudroom. Maybe expand out into what looks like the walk up to the foyer, but it's got like this angled part in it, so I don't know how much you can expand that. So I'm betting if this is expanded that I don't know how he was going to turn this into 25 feet. I don't know where he was stealing all of that space from. But yeah, so some expansion I could see. You could shrink the size of the mud and laundry room, or shrink the size of the garage, or move the garage slightly or whatever to accommodate.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's 10 feet to whatever that yellow thing is. That's the, yeah.
I mean, I don't see you moving a bathroom, like that's a project, even in the planning stage, to move a bathroom. So I don't see him doing that. So anyways, we'll go with what he's given us here.
So he's got a family of 4, and they watch movies together, so comfortable seating for 4 is a must. He'd be happy with reclining couches. The seats don't have to be individual theater recliners with arms in between each seat. When things get back to normal, they'll have guests over too, so that's why 1 or 2 rows of seats. So now that we see a starting point, what do we think? We don't see where you're getting all this room from, but yeah, I mean, so 13, it looks like he must be stealing a little bit from the mud room to make that happen, and then the extra 10 feet has got to be into the garage.
I guess so. That's the only thing that would kind of make sense to me. You can't expand the other.
What is
direction.
that? The door would be in the. I mean, the door is on. It's got to be that going into that foyer area, right?
Yeah, it's the left wall.
That looks like, and then what is that at the front there? Is that a window?
That's a window.
Or at the bottom?
Yeah. Because see, that angled stuff that's down below to the left of the garage in the diagram, that's a walkway as far as I can tell, coming
that's what it looks
to
like
the front door to the foyer. So, I mean, what one thought I had was, how much do we care about a second row?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
if the answer is very little, you could actually kind of leave the room as it is, just make it wider than it is long, and you could comfortably seat 4 people across in a 15-foot wide room. If you go with a reasonable screen size, say even like 100 inches, or maybe you're going flat panel, you're going 85 inches, you could.
I mean, how big are you people? That's the real question. Because I sit my entire family on a 10-foot plus, a little bit bigger
Uh-huh.
than 10-foot couch. And I have a 17-year-old son, I have a 14-year-old son, I have an 11-year-old son, and I have me and my
Mm-hmm.
wife. Now, none of us are morbidly obese, and I'm not suggesting that you are, but we're all pretty normal sizes. When we're all sitting together, it's tight.
Yeah.
It's tight, but we all have butts on couch. Nobody's sitting in
Right.
anybody's
Right.
lap. Um, and it all works. I don't really see why you need to even uh, what we did in ours, which our room is a little bit wider than
Mm-hmm.
yours. No, is that right? I believe that's right. Is that right?
Well,
Or is
this
mine
one would
11
be
feet
like, well,
wide?
either 12 feet wide or 50 feet wide, depending on how you orient things
Right.
with the
And I'm
current
thinking about the
office.
12 feet wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 12 feet wide. If you left it the way it is,
That's a
you
little
know,
squishy.
it's a little squishy getting
Yeah.
by because you push the one couch up to the side wall as far as it'll
Mm.
go, and then you walk past it on the other side. But and basically, if you angled it so that your couch was in the back third of your
Mm-hmm.
room, or a little bit past half, basically, a little bit past half, the doors would be directly to your right, essentially, as you were sitting on the couch,
Okay.
and your screen would be over your window.
Okay. Yeah, that could be one way to do
And
things.
because of that, as long as the door opens out
Mm.
instead of in,
Mm.
then when you open that door, you'll be able to walk in and sit on the couch, no
Mm.
problem. The problem would be, getting behind the couch, but then again, who needs to get behind that couch? They do. There's they come in from the door or whatever. It's still a couple of feet, and it's still enough room to get past. So if it were me and I was going to leave it this way, I would put that couch, uh, that yellow wall, basically,
Ah,
just past half, scooting all the way to the side so that your screen is over your window,
okay.
and you put another couch or something in the back of that
Like
room,
right along the
uh,
back wall. Yeah.
right along
I
the
mean,
back
the thing
wall,
is, if he
and
were
say
able
Bob's
to
Rental.
expand, let's say it's 13 feet wide, you steal some from the mudroom and maybe get it to like 17, 18 feet long, suddenly
Right.
that becomes pretty comfortable, honestly.
Yeah, 13 feet wide would make a big difference
Yeah.
in here.
Yeah.
The rest of it, I think it all depends on how much you care about that second row.
Yeah.
And remember, I mean, we're very social people. My wife and I, we have, we very rarely do we have a weekend that we're not seeing people, that at least before COVID. So that being said, we almost never end up watching a movie with our
Mm.
friends. The kids end up watching movies and they're all over the
Right.
place and using all the seats. But we almost never watch movies with our friends.
Yeah.
I mean, does that really happen that often with you? Because generally what happens with friends is you want to sit down and talk to them and share a meal and maybe, play some poker or board games, something like that. You want to talk.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to sit there for 2 hours and not say anything.
Yeah, because I mean,
Or
if
it,
you're okay with your lesser used rear row being right against your back wall, then now I'm like 17 feet long for the room. Totally fine. That's
right.
still with a projection setup. We haven't even gone with the idea that if you went with a flat panel, it doesn't even have to be that big,
Right.
necessarily.
Right.
But I think if you can expand the width beyond 12, like I was saying, if you were going to leave this completely as is, I would kind of maybe do away with the idea of a permanent back row and just make the room wider than it is long. Because 15 feet wide, totally fine for a 4-seater couch. And then when people are over, maybe you bring in some bar stools or some bean bags or something like that, and you do it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right, Eric. Eric is also having a brand new house built. Dude, the housing market is
Yeah.
insane right now. I do not know how people are doing it. Eric the plan for his layouts are set. He's working with a sort of Z-shaped room. No one has a Z-shaped
Well,
room,
it's not.
sir.
It's like a like a digital 2, like that. It's not a diagonal in there, but it's not an L. That's
All
my
right.
point is it's not an L. It's an L with a
All right. His
additional
theater
part.
area will be 20 feet wide and about 25 feet long, with a wet bar directly behind the theater. Then the space is open to the left and goes a bit back a bit farther. Total length is about 30 feet. Ceiling is 9 feet. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay, I remember. Have we talked to this guy before? I feel like we have.
No, well, he was the
This
fellow
looks
who was
familiar.
asking what happened to his question last week. This is the guy, but yeah. So
All right.
imagine you had sort of an L shape where it's the L is going off to your rear left of your theater area, but then it also goes back farther, so it becomes like a digital 2 shape.
All right. Whatever. I don't see the digital too, but let's just go with that. He really likes to have quite a lot of space between his primary seats and the screen. In his current home, he sits 17 feet away and would like to keep that distance. He only needs one primary row of seats facing forward. Additional seats can go on the side walls. That's his plan. In his current place, he uses a 110-inch screen size that he painted onto his wall, plus an Optima HD20 projector. He has 7 classic Ascend acoustic speakers from before the SE series, and one SVS PB12 Plus sub. He'll have questions about audio, but that's for later. Today is all about the video side of things. He would like an increased screen size in his house. Yeah, I would too. 110 inches from 17 feet.
Yeah.
And he'll be able to control the lighting. But it'd be really nice if it didn't have to be completely pitch black all the time for sports, video games, having friends over and kids playing. If you could have some lights on, that's what he wants. So, first of all, I'm just going to stop you right there and say, if you say the words light rejecting screen to me, I am going to lose my mind.
Really?
This is a home theater where he occasionally wants to have the lights on for sports, for video games, and when kids are playing. Who gives a crap what the screen looks like at that point? You don't care.
I don't know, man. It
You
looks.
don't care. If you're talking over the top of the movie or the thing, then you don't care what it looks like, sir. You don't
I
care.
mean, just a
That's what I
regular
say.
white screen, it washes out so bad.
You don't have to put that many lights on, Rob,
Uh,
for people to have to be able to see and talk to each other. You have a dimmer, Rob. There are dimmers in the world.
Yeah. I don't know, man. There's gonna be light coming from the back end of this room when there's people over, and the back end of this room is gonna be shining light onto the screen. I don't know,
Dimmer.
man. There's pretty good ambient light rejecting screens these days.
I don't care. What screen size would we recommend for his 17-foot distance? 35 feet across.
Nah.
He says anything and any reason to go with something other than a 16.9 aspect. This is a troll. This whole question is a troll. He is trolling me. I've been trolled because you're going to say things that are going to make me mad, and that's a troll. Anyways. What screen size would we recommend for a 17-foot viewing distance, and any reason to go with something other than a 16:9 aspect ratio? He'd be fine making some sort of masking solution if he ends up really wanting to take care of the black bars for CinemaScope content. So, Rob's going to give you the calculations, but 17 feet, I am not looking at what Rob wrote down. I mean, I really, it's really hard to go bigger than first of all, you can't really go bigger than 150. I'm gonna say 135 because that's gonna get you the best image that you can get and get some HDR in there and all that other stuff.
Okay. So I mean, I'll just lay out that right now with his 110-inch screen size, he said, right, from 17 feet, he's got a 26.45 degree field of view. So that's small.
Right.
That's not what I would want for a theater experience. Now, if you got up to my preferred 45 degree field of view for a really fully cinematic experience, if you remain at 17 feet to get a 45 degree field of view, you'd need a 194-inch screen. It's just not realistic.
You don't have to worry about light in your. You'll have to worry about all the cooling systems you'll need for your Wolf projector to be able to do that. Yes.
Now, to stay at a 45 degree field of view, even from 15 feet away, you'd need a 170-inch screen. So, again, as we mentioned earlier, and as Tom just mentioned, 150 inches is like the upper limit for today's projectors that I would feel reasonably comfortable. I don't think your HDR is going to look very good, but if you're willing to forego that and just say what can be sort of reasonably handled, 150 inches is sort of the upper limit. And to get a 45 degree field of view for that, you need to be 13 feet 2 inches away from it. Eyes to screen, 13 feet 2 inches from a 150-inch screen. It's always closer than you think. Now, You're coming from 26.45 degrees. You want bigger than that. I absolutely understand that. You might not have to go all the way up to 45 degrees. It starts becoming unwieldy. You'd either have to move considerably closer than I think you want to be, or go for a screen size that is just unreasonable. So, to me, cinematic you can still get a cinematic feel at a 36-degree field of view. Any smaller than that, I don't feel like you're getting a cinematic experience. I feel like you're watching a television when it's smaller than that. But 36 degree to me is sort of the minimum for a cinematic feel. So from there, a 150-inch screen, you can get that from 16 feet 9 inches. We're talking 3 inches less than what you have right now. That might just be the width of the mount of something that you do, or, non-reclining versus reclining, right? So that to me is kind of reasonable, right? You could get the cinematic experience at a size that is manageable, maybe not optimal, but manageable, without really moving your seats very much at all. 135 inches that Tom just talked about, to stay at a 36-degree field of view, you want to be just over 15 feet. 15 feet 1 inch is a 36-degree field of view from 135.
What's the problem here? Does he want to sit 17 feet away from the wall?
He wants to be 17 feet. He wants to have 17 feet of space in front of him.
That's fine. Yeah. So you can have 17 feet of space in front of you, but a drop-down screen that drops down like.
But the question is, does he want 17 feet of space at all times, or would a retractable screen be okay? And you just, I mean, if you mount a 135-inch screen 2 feet closer to you than the physical front wall, so you're 17 feet from the physical front wall, but the screen is a retractable one and it's 15 feet from you, well, 135 inches could be reasonable there. Or 150 inches could give you the bigger field of view, but from 15 feet away, the screen itself. So that's sort of where I'd put things. Now, Tom mentioned he doesn't want to hear about ambient light rejecting screens, but I'm gonna mention that they exist anywhere. Now, once again, my favorite light rejecting screens come from Vision. We're not talking about ultra short throw at this point. Now, maybe that comes into consideration, but as I alluded to, they're really meant for like a 120-inch screen. Today's ultra short throw projectors, maybe 130 at the outside, and it's just not going to do it for you for the type of seating distance that you want. It's just not going to work. So if you're going with a standard projector and an ambient light rejecting screen, not ultra short throw, Vision's Aurora, not ultra short throw, just the regular Aurora, it has a maximum size of 135 inches. So again, we're talking about either sitting closer or doing it retractable. But one very reasonable option, because this comes up later where, price is a consideration, $750, a pretty reasonable price for a screen, can get you Elite's Cinegray 3D. Don't pay attention to the 3D. They're not talking about stereoscopic 3D with it. It's just the number they put on it, which is the one that I like from Elite. As far as ambient light rejecting goes, they go up to 150 inches for $750. So I think that's a pretty reasonable solution there. Again, you're not going to get fantastic HDR at that screen size, but all things considered, it's a pretty good balance. He was mentioning well, let's see. Actually, that's the next one, is acoustically transparent. So we'll get into it there.
Okay. I just want to say, if he's sitting 17 feet away from a 110-inch screen, and he does nothing but get a bigger screen, it's still going to look bigger to him.
Oh, it's going to look bigger.
It's not going to be the cinematic experience that we may be going for in our own home theaters, but at least to him, it will be objectively a better experience than he had before. So, again, where do you sit in the movie theater? We talk about this all the time. Where do you sit in the movie theater? How close do you sit to the screen there? Is that what you want to experience at home, or are you looking for something different? Make sure that we're making assumptions based on what recommendations are and what our experience is. But that doesn't mean that your opinion and your preferences are not valid and should be taken, above what we're saying. So if you're like, I just want it to be a little bit bigger than this right now, I don't need it to be massive, I just want it to be a little bit bigger, then just buy a slightly larger screen and Bob's your uncle, you're done. You don't have to do any of the other stuff that we're going to say. You definitely don't need a light rejecting screen, though, whatever Rob says. All right, it seems like a lot of people love acoustically transparent screens, and he has the space to make a false wall, if that's the best approach, but he doesn't mind at all if his speakers are visible. He actually likes their look. So it would be strictly about the audio quality, and his screen size would force the center to be too close to the floor. So what are our thoughts on that? And if his screen size would force the center to be too close to the floor. Well, again, if you're talking about having a 17 feet in front of you and
Hmm.
you build a false wall, well, then are you scooting your chairs back because of the false
Right.
wall? I don't see that this is. You have one row of seats. As long as there's space on the floor for the speaker to kind of angle up at you for the center channel, I don't see this being a problem.
Right.
So I would not go through the extra expense and all this other stuff. You like the speakers. I like looking at speakers. I don't want to hide my speakers behind stuff. You don't care about the rest of it, and you want this large distance for. I mean, I really I know people get things in their heads, and I do the same thing, when I'm talking about certain, preferences I
Hmm.
have. But how important is 17 feet to you?
I mean,
Like,
he
what is
was
the magic
he
number
was
about that?
really set on it in his email. He's like, this is what he's landed on in his current setup. Went through multiple trials, and that's just what works for him. So I'm willing to accept that. He's put in the research and trial and error, and this is where he's landed. So we'll work with it to the best of our ability. As I mentioned earlier, when you have a center speaker that's going to be physically below your screen instead of behind it, that 150 presents a bit of a challenge in getting, really good positioning of that center.
Right.
It's going to be low. It's just necessarily going to be quite low and close to the floor.
But he's only got one row of seats,
Yeah,
so who
yeah,
cares?
exactly. These are all little compromises to make. Normally, I would say that like 135 inches is sort of where you can comfortably make everything work. But so again, Tom's going to say you don't need ambient light rejecting, but if you were to get ambient light rejecting, there are some ambient light rejecting screens that are available with micro perforations to make them acoustically transparent, but the maximum screen size of any of the ones that I would recommend that have all of those things, ambient light rejecting and acoustically transparent, the biggest they get is 135 inches, at which point you just get the normal one without the perforations and you put your center below it. So it
Right.
almost defeats the purpose, in my opinion. So it's going to be a matter of, do you take a little compromise on the positioning of your center speaker and what HDR is going to look like in a projection setup, and go for the 150-inch size because you would really like that at least that field of view 36 degrees from the 17-foot distance? Or are you willing to move a bit closer to keep the same field of view, go down to a 135? You compromise much less on the HDR and the center channel placement. I would kind of take it as that choice.
Okay. So he won't be buying a new projector until everything is built and completed, so that's a year away, and there might be a new projector models available by then. But he's looking in the Epson 5050 UB sort of price range, and would prefer to keep screen costs down too. So taking all that into account, what do we think is overall best solution here? Your overall best solution to make everything easy and work really well and be beautiful and have really good everything? Just get over the 17 feet thing and move closer to the
Just a
screen.
little closer. I mean, 15 feet we're talking
You literally do not have to buy a bigger screen. You could change nothing. You could just sit closer.
I mean, his current screen is painted onto the wall, so he's not bringing it with him.
Right.
But
That's
I mean,
true. That's
you
true.
could,
Yeah,
you could
right.
very reasonably do 135 inches from 15 feet, right?
Yeah.
We're pretty much all in agreement there. So 2 feet closer, that solves a ton of things. I mean, if you
we answer the 16 by 9 thing? Did we answer that?
I guess not directly. Yeah, stick with 16 by 9, please. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Finally we're in agreement there after years of Rob trying to convince people to get 3 screens that drop down in front of each other.
Yeah. I like
16 by 9 is the way to go.
I don't mind
okay.
a 2-screen or 3-screen solution. But not here.
Your cheapest and easiest option is to move your chairs into
Sure.
a more reasonable place. It actually helps in not just video.
Right.
Because now you're no longer, I mean, you're probably 14 feet away from your speaker. So if your screen's on the wall and your speakers are, right up there as well, you're still, 14, 15 feet away from your speakers, which means now we have to talk about amplification and how sensitive your speakers are and everything else. If you just move the chairs closer, suddenly the screen size becomes less of an issue and the cost. The projector brightness becomes less of an issue and throw distances become less of a cost. The speaker sensitivity and buying more amps and everything else becomes a non-issue. Everything falls into line as long as you don't have to sit 17 feet away from the screen.
Also, if his sketch is not to scale, but if it's reasonably close to scale, it gives you somewhere you could reasonably mount a surround left speaker instead of it being in front of you. That might be a consideration as well. So, yep, hopefully he takes all of that under advisement. But I don't know if there's a replacement coming soon for the 5050 UB. If you went with that, it's still a great choice. It's still a wonderful projector.
We won't know until, I mean, you're talking a year from now. Don't even shop until you're ready. Don't even look.
But I think that Elite Cinegray 3D screen material, so that's in their Sable frame, which is a very nice, reasonable frame. And if you went for the 135-inch size and sat 15 feet away from it instead of the 150-inch size for all the reasons that we've repeated now, now you're down to, I think, $600, so it's a really reasonable price for the screen at that point too.
All right. Matt is getting some in-wall speakers. He hasn't used in-walls before. He looked around at accessories for less, and the Canton 949 LCR caught his eye for $200 each. Any thoughts on those? And the other in-walls we would recommend more highly for the same price or less. So you went to the aftermarket place to shop, and you want us to try to find something that's the same price. Okay.
I mean,
take a look at these.
I've
got no problem.
It's all ceramic drivers, including the tweeter, which is unusual.
Yeah. It is. In Canton, I have heard very few examples of Canton speakers. Universally, well, in my experience, my overall opinion of them is they're all right.
Right.
They're all right.
Yeah.
This is better than an entry-level speaker. And they have lines, so I'm sure they have something that's like, beryllium or some crap. I don't really care. The stuff I've heard has mostly been decent for the price that you pay. Okay. Now, I would not pay $442, which what they're saying the deal is that is on this. For $200, this is probably a really good deal.
Okay.
I would say.
Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with it to say, strongly one way or the other. The driver material choice is strange to me. That's an unusual choice of material for a tweeter in particular. Pretty common for woofers, but for tweeter, it's a little bit strange. So anyway, that's all I have there, just to go on it without having heard it. There are, $200 in-walls. In particular, like I keep sort of coming back to HSUs. Their HIW1s is $300 for a pair, so it's $150 a piece. I think they're a really good value for in-wall speakers. And then, of course, our stalwart is RBH. We often mention Kef as well, very much like Kef's in-wall speakers, but you're probably not going to get them at that price from Kef. So RBH does have their Visage A series. We really like the M series. The M series have some excellent drivers in them, but they will be above this price range. So the RBH Visage A series could be a consideration for you here, or the HSUs. That's where I would kind of point you.
This doesn't make any sense.
What?
The installation opening is 14.3 inches by 6 inches, but the dimensions of the thing are 7 by 15.3. So I guess it's got a lip that goes over everything.
Yeah, it's got a big fascia.
So if you have not, sir, I know I keep saying this, if you have not located your wall studs before you have decided on getting these rather large, because they are MTM design, right? So it's not just a tweeter and a mid-range, it's a mid-range, a tweeter, and a mid-range design speaker. And if you have not located your studs and found out that you can, in fact, place them where you want to place them, then you are doing yourself a disservice. So make sure that you do that very carefully beforehand. Let me go back to the question. Yeah, did Aperion stop selling in walls?
No, it's just they replaced them with
more
ones I'm not super impressed with. So yeah.
So he knows we like to recommend backer boxes for in walls and in ceiling speakers. It really doesn't seem like many in wall speakers come with those. Is there somewhere we recommend for getting backer boxes? Where's that one that has that's like a bag? What's it called?
The Dynabox.
Yeah,
discontinued, and they were expensive.
No.
Anyway.
No, I was thinking about the new one that somebody just recommended to us that was totally weird.
Oh,
I don't
well,
know.
I mean,
Maybe I'll
I was
remember it.
thinking of the quiet box, but that's not a bag.
Let me look at this quiet box
Yeah,
thing
so
and see if
ISO
that's what
Store
it is.
has quiet boxes. So those would be reasonable for an in ceiling, but not for an in wall because they're too deep and not large enough for an in wall. But for an in ceiling, the
That
ISO
wasn't it.
Store quiet box would be a reasonable solution there. RBH sells both retrofit and pre drywall going up backer solutions for their speakers. And then if you go with the HSUs, they don't have anything that they sell, but all you need is 1 cubic foot of air, which would be in a normal wall bay, would actually end up being 3 feet tall. Because the bay is only 3.5 inches deep in a normal wall. So you'd end up with a 3-foot tall construction. But I mean, that's something you could fabricate yourself with just a piece of plywood and a couple of 2x4 blocks and then some insulation inside of that. So,
Right.
yep.
Okay. Chad. Chad went with a recommendation of ours, an 85-inch Sony X900H. He loves it, but he's got a couple of format things that are puzzling him.
I'm glad he's loving it.
If he uses the Netflix app that is built into the TV, he gets Dolby Vision on supported titles, but Atmos doesn't seem to be working. Furthermore, his Denon X6400H doesn't detect the Sony as having an eARC connection, only regular ARC. Any idea what's going on there? Dude, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it has something to do with your cable.
Nope. It's
Okay.
a firmware update that they've already announced because out of the box, even though the X900H has HDMI 2.1 ports, 2 of them, it doesn't have any HDMI 2.1 features yet until the firmware update is released. So that apparently includes eARC. I am seeing some reports of that. So it'll come with a firmware update. That's basically it. Now, Atmos can work over a standard ARC connection, but it does have to be implemented. So if that's not working from the built-in app, then it just means Sony didn't bother to implement it until the firmware update. So that's probably all that's going on there.
Firmware.
Yup.
The bane of our
I
existence.
know, right?
So here's an NVIDIA Shield from 2017. He can't get Dolby Vision from Netflix when he tried using that. He doesn't get Atmos. What's the deal?
The 2017 NVIDIA Shield doesn't support Dolby Vision, full stop. The 2019 updates do. So if you've seen, hey, NVIDIA Shield support Dolby Vision now, yes, they do, but only the 2019 hardware. Yeah.
On the picture quality side, he tried switching between the Sony's built-in Netflix app and the Shield's Netflix app to compare Dolby Vision versus HDR10. He couldn't see much, if any, difference. Should he? No.
I mean, not really, because
I mean, it's all the same thing. It's just a different way of doing it. It's like maybe the Dolby Vision one's a little bit technically better, but you know, it's just one of these things, and I know we keep coming back to this, and I know I keep coming back to this over and over again. We get into the minutia of these things, and we
Right.
start arguing. Should I be doing DTS up sampling or up mixing, or up converting for the DTSX, or should I use Dolby Atmos when I'm getting a 5.1 signal? And the answer is, who cares? You're not going to notice a difference. Objectively there are differences between them,
No.
but the reality is in your actual experience will be it's now coming from over my head. Woohoo! And that'll be the end of it. You will not be able to tell the difference between one and the other. And I honestly believe in most of these cases, what Rob and I care more about is that it works.
Mm.
We don't care who makes it work. We just want it to work. And if it's everybody has Dolby Vision, fine. Everybody has Dolby. If everybody's doing HDR10 plus, fine. Everybody's doing HDR10 plus. But what we don't like is when some formats are supported by some companies and
Right.
other formats are supported by the other, and then you have to worry about what's compatible with which is where we are right now. We used to call these format wars, but they're not formats anymore. They're like,
and it's not fully a war because you can support them all if you choose to.
Right,
but yeah, so
right.
I mean, where Dolby Vision makes itself noticeable is when the signal exceeds the capability of the display. So if you have a movie that was mastered all the way up to 4,000 or 10,000 nits, and you're showing it on a TV that only can produce a maximum of 500 or 700 nits, that's where Dolby Vision is likely to be visibly different from the HDR10 version, because it's going to be able to retain all the detail from scene to scene, frame to frame, whereas at some point the HDR10 with its static metadata is probably going to drop some detail somewhere. But in your case, you have a television that's capable of getting up to 1,000 nits, and all of Netflix's content is mastered to 1,000 nits. So in essence, on Netflix, your television can show everything as it is. It doesn't have to tone map anything. It's like, well, the signal said to show 900 nits. I can do that. It doesn't have to touch the signal. So you're not going to see any difference between Netflix Dolby Vision and Netflix HDR10 on a TV that can produce 1,000 nits, and yours can.
There you go. All right, Jeremy, any opinions on the Flare Audio Calmer in earplugs? There are $35 little pieces of silicone that claim to reduce the distortion that comes from the resonance of our own human ear canals. They claim to provide two benefits, reducing stress and improving audio quality, but they'll also mention that calmer earplugs have an unintended benefit of reducing tinnitus, according to some of their customers. They're completely passive devices, no processing, not even filters, just shaped pieces of silicone that you put in your ears. What do we think? I think I've seen these things. What do we think? Let me click on this real quick, because I have not. Yeah. These are all over Facebook.
Okay.
This just sounds like garbage to me. That's straight up marketing. I mean, I don't see anything in here that would reduce. This is all psychosomatic, placebo effect. This is all expectation bias. This is not them actually doing the thing. This is them, people expecting them to do the things they do. I mean, first of all, how do you? I mean, you can technically measure reducing stress, but they're not really.
Well, they talk about how in
that.
everyday life we're exposed to noises that produce resonance in the ear canal. They equate that resonance to being distortion, and they say it activates our fight or flight response, like all day long.
Did they mention quantum at any point? Because I feel like our quantum is coming up here.
I mean, what these should do is they are partially blocking your ear canal, so they will, in all likelihood, reduce the decibel level that reaches your eardrum, because you have a partial blockage of your ear canal now. So that much I would believe. And you know what? Just, these aren't plugging your ear, because air can move through them. So you don't necessarily get that plugged feel. It isn't going to reduce the sound pressure level as much as a full-on ear plug would. You're still going to be able to hear. So yeah, just toning everything down a little bit in volume, that might calm you down. Sure, it absolutely could. What I would suggest, if that's what you want to do, are the ones that have been around for ages and have been properly designed to not alter frequency response, because to me as a listener that's important, and those are Etimotics, plugs. They are $14 for a pair, so $21 cheaper than the Flare Audio Calmer. Again, they're just passive devices. They don't do anything particularly special, but what I do prefer about the Etimotic plugs is they don't still provide a hole where something could get lodged, because I'm looking at the Flare ones and I'm like, that looks like something where something could get lodged in my ear with that design, whereas the Etimotic plugs actually close up my ear canal while still allowing a calculated amount of sound to come through without altering frequency response. They work really well too for $14.
Yeah, the other one it all screams, psychobabble and marketing speak.
Wad up a little bit of Kleenex and put it in your ear and things get quieter. If that calms you down, that's true.
Mark has a Frankenstein sound system that he's pieced together over the past 20 years. He's got two 12-inch subs, one JBL, one Jensen. Both are pretty weak by today's standards, 120 watt amplifiers. He's got you can't really call that weak. I mean, the amplifier power, while important, is not a definitive measure of how powerful or good a sub is, in my opinion. Though, when you see 100 or 120 watts on a sub,
for a 12-inch sub, limited excursion that can happen from that.
Yeah. So he's got a pair of towers and two pairs of bookshelf speakers. He didn't mention what brands or models. In the center is a Klipsch Synergy V3 that we like to improve. For right now, what he wants most is a nice front 3 set of speakers for a poor home theater guy. He's dealing with an open space, 20 by 15, for his living room where his theater is set up, but it's open to a loft and its vaulted ceiling, worst possible room in his words. And he's powering them with an Onkyo TX NR646. He's concerned about output. He noticed that the higher wattage in the specs for a 6 ohm load versus an 8 ohm load. So, should he be looking for 6 ohm speakers? He saw that the 8 ohm rating for his Onkyo is 100 watts and 2 channels driven, but the 6 ohm rating is 170 watts. It doesn't say RMS or how many channels for the 6 ohm rating, though. Of course, it doesn't.
That's
he tried
at
to
1 kilohertz into one channel with 1% distortion. Probably that's pretty standard. Yep.
Yeah. He tried asking Onkyo, but they just seemed to be reading off the product description page, and they weren't any help. So can we explain what's going on there and what impedance his new speakers should have in order to get past the best performance in his open room? Okay, so as you lower the impedance of the speakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most speakers are at 8 ohms.
Nominal.
Yeah, nominal. You could see them go all the way down to 4 ohms nominal in typical sort of, I want to say over the counter, but without getting to super esoteric brands or esoteric designs like electrostatic designs and stuff like that. You could see them get down to 4 ohms nominal. That would be unusual, but it happens. Those are going to be tower speakers and probably usually it's top of the line stuff from certain manufacturers who are expecting you to buy an amp to go along with it. But most speakers will be 8 ohms. So as you lower that number, the speakers will draw more power.
We shouldn't
from
say
your
draw.
amplifier.
Okay, so there's a difference in potential on either end of the speaker,
Right.
and they have less impedance to the current of electrons flowing through them. So in essence, more wattage will make its way through your speaker if your speaker has a lower impedance.
Right. Which is, again, we're not pushing that power out of your amplifier.
No, we're not forcing it into the speaker. No.
The speaker is saying, "This is how much I need. Get to me." Right?
Yeah, well, it's the difference in potential on either side. That remains the same, regardless of the speaker. That's the signal coming from your electronics. And then it's saying, in response to how difficult it is to send electrons through that speaker that's in between this difference in potential, we're going to respond with the appropriate number of electrons, the current. So, yeah, that's
let's say
what's going on.
Let's say we have
a
perfect system, right, with no loss and no resistance and none of that other stuff. You take a speaker that is 8 ohms, and it will ask for, or it will, the difference will be 100 watts is coming from your amplifier, right? Take that same speaker and then you make it into a 4 ohm speaker. It now is going to request, or it's going to pull, or it's going to do whatever. 200 watts. Yeah, 200. It's going to double it.
Yeah.
Now, did your amplifier get more powerful, or does your amplifier push all that? No. So when they say we hooked up an 8 ohm speaker, or in this case 2 8 ohm speakers, right? Because it was 2 channels driven. We put 1 watt, not 1 watt, 1 volt in it. We got 100 watts.
2.63 volts is the standard, I think, is what they use. But
yeah, 1 watt per meter, or whatever.
Standard signal.
Yeah. So we got 100 watts. But when we did it to an unspecified speaker doing unspecified things that was 6 ohms, we got 170 watts. Now, if you can do the math here, right, they should have gotten 150. If everything was equal, they should have gotten 150, because it should, at 4 ohms, it should have been 200.
I'm not sure that's how the equation goes on that one, but regardless.
I'm pretty sure it's pretty close. But anyways, it doesn't matter. The fact is these numbers mean nothing. You should get an 8 ohm speaker. You should sit within 12 feet of it, and you should not worry.
Well, I mean, the real bottom line is you most definitely should not restrict yourself only to speakers that are listed as 6 ohm nominal. That is
because you are going to find yourself not having a whole lot of speakers to choose from.
Not a line item where you say anything other than that I'm not going to consider. So yeah, it's not that that when you connect, so first of all speakers vary in their impedance based on the frequency that they're playing. None of them are a ruler flat line where they remain at 8 ohms regardless of the frequency being played. So that is a variable thing to begin with. That is an up and down. But the nominal is akin to a rough average of what it sort of works out to. Just to put it in very easy terms. But yeah, this amplifier rating is not saying that if you connect a 6 ohm speaker, suddenly this becomes a more powerful amplifier. That is not what's going on at all. The amplifier is the same no matter what. The signal being sent is the same no matter what. In response to the impedance load of the speaker, this is how many watts will go through, but the parameters change. The 170 version is almost undoubtedly one channel at only one frequency. 1 kilohertz is the standard, and often with higher distortion figures as well. So don't worry about it. Don't limit yourself to 6 ohm nominal speakers only.
Right. So he was thinking he should get towers. Of course he was, because everybody's thinking that. Again, he wants a front 3 speaker upgrade that sounds better than his Klipsch Synergy Center, but on a small budget. What would we recommend? All right,
so do keep in mind, 20-foot by 15-foot living room that's open to a loft and vaulted ceiling. So he is dealing with a significant amount of cubic feet of air.
Right. But in reality, though, it's all about, what's more important is how close you're actually sitting to the speakers. Now, for the bass and the rest of it, that is, all the rest of that space is important.
Yeah.
But for the treble and the mid-range, it's mostly direct sound. Yeah. There's stuff that's reflecting around the room, no doubt about it, but we really care more about how close you're sitting to these speakers. So would you benefit from towers? Not if you're on a budget and you're sitting within a certain distance of these things. You are paying a lot more for the cabinet. You're paying a lot more for added bass response, which will be good if you are sitting 12 feet. 14 feet away from a speaker. But if you're sitting 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet away from a speaker, then I care less about whether or not it's a tower speaker or not. I care more about how good it is and, how good the treble and the mid-range is than whether or not it can pump out a whole bunch of bass. We'll get to that when we get to the subwoofers. So how close are you sitting to these things?
Right.
Because if you can sit close enough that you can get bookshelf speakers, well, then you're going to get a lot more speaker for your dollar than you're going to get by trying to get tower speakers.
Yeah, I was thinking in his scenario, it certainly could be the case that he's got a fairly decent seating distance, could be 12 in excess of 12 feet. Knowing what amplifier that he is working with, just above entry level Onkyo there. I don't think there's going to be a scenario where going with fairly efficient speakers is going to turn out to be a bad thing for him.
Yeah.
I
mean, horn loaded would kind of
and
generally, that's what he's been dealing with anyways, right? The synergy, the Klipsch.
But the Synergy is like one of the it's not a great speaker. The Icon and the Synergy were my two least favorite Klipsch speakers that they ever made. They aren't up to the quality of other Klipsch speakers. I wouldn't have a problem going with other Klipsch speakers, but I really like to get up to the Reference Premier if you can at all in their lineup. They are my favorites by quite a margin, and I think it's probably a little bit more than he wants to spend. So our good friends HSU. I really like HSU's horn-loaded speakers that they have. I think they're an excellent value. I think they have very nice sound quality. I would be a little surprised if you were disappointed with them. And with the volume of air that you're dealing with, I think it would be appropriate to go for, they only have two. They have the HB1 Mark II, the bookshelf with a single woofer, and they have the HC1 Mark II with two woofers that is capable of a little bit extra output in that crossover region where you're going to be crossing over to your subs. And I think that's appropriate for what you're dealing with. It's $250 each for the HC1. I know it mentions them as a center, but right in the manual, it explicitly tells you how to rotate the tweeter 90 degrees and stand it vertically and use it as an MTM bookshelf speaker. They are not small, don't think that just because they have a center and or bookshelf form factor that they're small. They're decently sized. They're not towers, but with the form factor they have, you can get them at the right height. You can choose the stands that'll work for you. You can put them on something else. I really like that as a solution. I think it's a very value-driven price point there. If you're just like, I've got to have towers and if I'm reading the situation right, and something you would like is, let's call it tipped up bass response from the speakers. Not exactly linear.
Tipped up.
Some extra bass oomph in them. JBL's Stage series. They have their A170 towers that are $300 each. So they're a little bit more than the HC1s, but for a tower form factor speaker of any reasonable quality, that's a pretty good price at $300 each. The JBL Stage series, I actually quite like their tweeter that they put in there. They are a bass-heavy speaker. There's just no question about it. That's what they went for. It was on purpose that's what they ended up with. But if that's what you want, it might be to your liking. So if you really want that tower form factor at the lower price, JBL Stage A170s. But I think the way to go is HSU's HC1 Mark II.
All right. That's going to be it for this week.
Okay.
I'm afraid. I know, Rob.
We've fallen farther and farther behind.
That's okay. I'm going to be okay with that. Once we get back in my house and things start getting back to normal, we can catch up.
It's true. We did hit 2 hours, so what can we say? We've got Tom H. Not you, Tom. Other Tom, because he's an H
Sorry.
and you're an A.
Sorry, Tom.
Terry G. Matt G. No relation. It's just the similar last initial. Lior Matt H. Got lots of Matts this week. And one more at the bottom here, Ken S. That's everybody on the list. I got lots of questions that came in actually today on the Tuesday. So if I didn't read your name, but you sent your question on Monday or Tuesday, I should have it. And there you go.
All right. To get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Timothy for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and leaving us a PayPal donation, as well as our 125 patrons over at patreon.com.
For sure, Timothy. Thank you very much for that PayPal donation. And big thanks to our 125 supporters over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast.
And thank you to DJ at the Bright Side Home Theater podcast for sending us some swag eventually. I haven't gotten it yet, so it doesn't really count. I don't know why we're thanking him. And notes of gratitude from Eric, Matt B, Chad, New Tom, Terry, and Matt G.
For sure. Yeah, DJ, thank you very much for we assume sending us that swag.
Promising. I haven't seen nothing. Until I see it, I don't understand why we're thanking this man. He could be sending us lies. It's a box of lies, Rob.
I don't think it is. And also, check out brightsidehometheater.com for the latest episode that'll post on Friday. When, if you're listening to the audio-only version of this podcast, it'll be out on Friday afternoon because I'll be there. If you want 2 more hours of Rob, because, you know, who doesn't want 4 hours of Rob talking in a week? I'm over there talking with DJ about home theater and The Martian. And then, of course, we want to thank Eric, Matt B, Chad, Tom, Terry, and Matt G for those notes of gratitude. Really do appreciate it. Really do like getting that encouragement these days. So thank you for that. And thank you to everybody for continuing to listen. We really do appreciate that.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.